as that of Corona and stuff, which is that there can be something that is, real or whatever, but it can be then co-opted and used for whatever the folks in charge want it to be used for. So I think Hugh's take on UFOs and stuff were that they would be used nefariously for, um, ulterior motives, likely self-serving of the folks that, you know, pull the wool over people's eyes when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really find UFOs very interesting personally, but I have seen that they've definitely been ramping up um, the rhetoric on the mainstream and stuff over the past 2 years or so. Um, and I think, yeah, they might be doing something. I don't know. I really couldn't speak to that, but the thing is, it's all a result of whatever kind of priming and conditioning has taken place. And so what Hugh was doing was priming people in this group to not see those UFOs when they come, if they come. It just, casting a reverse spell, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to counter that which is coming down the pipeline from the magicians in charge,
Right.
uh, if you want to use that
Well,
terminology.
the narratives are already in place. The stories or myths of them, and one, Hugh correctly, and many others, maybe others on this call would correctly draw a connection between the perpetual need of the military to invent new threats and new reasons and whole new divisions for militarization. And so the creation of a space force is,
Hmm.
it comes absolutely perfectly, and it naturalizes something. After more than 60 years of um, propaganda about UFOs that was either to hide or cloak actually existing technology programs for advanced weapon systems and crafts. Um, that's absolutely documented that occurred. And, I don't want to shift the discussion to UFOs. The point is that it seemed to me, unless I am mistaken, that Hugh went then deep into info energy and psychic manifestation as a possible explanation. He said that the, the there is a branch of government that really believes this, right? That isn't just believing
Hmm.
that it's a nice psyop, right, to cover for advanced stealth aircraft or advanced propulsion systems. Of course, they need that. But it's there is a faction that actually believes it, according to Hugh,
Yeah, no,
with all the reasons why we might do that. And so, where this discussion's gone is that psychic manifestation can manifest a whole bunch more than just kooky things in the sky and theories of little green men or whatever. It can manifest entire political movements, the Nuremberg, entire um, quote unquote realities that don't exist, that are just creations, and that shift where the seam of history is going. And we're in this right now. I mean, in so many ways. And I just, um, it doesn't actually need to be, and we can just observe it happening. Nation states are being moved by one or another theory or account of what's happening right now in a country, or a region that nobody or very few people knew about or cared about just 8 weeks ago. So it's fascinating.
yeah, no,
Hopefully,
it's
we won't blow ourselves up with this.
Yeah, that's the scariest thing is uh, the entire world as it's constructed, or the human world at least, is everything we're just talking about right here. It's all just groups of people that have had their thinking aligned. In other words, their information networks along the same path, and that's resulted in global industrial civilization. That's what it is. It's a physical manifestation of uh, the framework of this group's collective mind, um, and yeah, it what it requires is a belief in it. If no one believed in any of this stuff, they wouldn't take it seriously, and they wouldn't. It would not have manifested the way it did. But yeah, the flip side of that coin is, yeah, if you have all of these people who truly deeply believe in this thing, um, that's going to come from outer space and annihilate us, or it's going to come and we have to, I don't know what it is, but blow up the world or whatever, to prepare it for the aliens or something like that. That is the physical manifestation of this
Well,
information network of the group. Yeah.
I mean, two substrains of it are the belief by some that the aliens are there and they are us from the future coming back to warn us and interfere just in time in our foolishness with nuclear weapons or whatever. I mean, this you can't make this shit up, okay? And you need a large file folder or a file drawer to put in all this stuff. You can't make this shit up stuff in it. And another metaphor that it brings back from Hugh's discussion and from sort of my own looking at the world is cargo cult, right? So when a population or a society is under great pressure from new technology or from rapid modernization or an invasion from without, an island culture in the Pacific that suddenly sees tall ships, or a indigenous Middle East culture that suddenly is invaded by Romans, which was a super advanced civilization of the time, they tend to invent and think that their situation, their horrifying situation, is going to be rescued. It's a human psychology thing. It must be that we invent it. That there must be sympathetic gods or ancestors will come back. It's either ancestors will return, bringing booty or solutions or punishment of the evil ones or retribution or a restart or reset or a new dispensation. God will start over. Things will be wiped clean. The punitive uh, entity will come down and rescue us, give us goods. The variety of these cargo cults, and our societies are under enormous trauma and pressure right now from an obviously declining resource base for infinite growth, which won't work any longer. And so we're probably going to see ever growing varieties that fit the cargo cult mode. That someone is going to rescue us, some great storm is going to come and wipe things clean, set things right. Aliens are going to come back and put their finger in the way of launching the nuclear weapons, or they're going to simply give us free energy. I mean, you cannot make up the number of these things, and every one of them. To go back to what Going South was saying, every one of these things is a utopian effort to distract from confronting the reality of what we must attend to, or should attend to, or should at least acknowledge here in this habitat that we have. It's all an effort of the brain, called the alien cortex, whatever, to distract from what is in front of us, which may just be the mortality that we've brought about on ourselves. So, don't know. Cargo culting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. It's the meta alien cortex doing its thing to try to avoid the inevitable end of it at some point. And it can there's no limit to the amount of stuff it can fabricate. That's like the biggest thing I think people have to understand. There's no lie that's too big. People sort of think, well, I can only be fooled so much. If someone says something truly ridiculous, I'll know that when I see it, and I won't fall for that. But the amount of lies that you can tell people, or the way that you can shape this reality that people experience, is infinite. You can do anything. In uh, certain examples, you can see uh, some guy like Jim Jones could construct a reality for people that literally gets them all to kill themselves. Ultimately, it can take you that far, and yeah, I think that's a good example that pertains to the much bigger picture, the global picture. It's the exact same thing going on a global scale, the construction of this reality. Um, but yeah, I don't think I have to tell anyone on this call that it's not for your own good. Definitely, definitely not. Um,
But
so
having observed all these, you know, is there anything that, of course, it's in my alien cortex saying, is there any action plan? Is there anything we can do in our own lives as an egregore um, against these lies, except fortifying ourselves on being not gullible? I mean, or are we even called or obligation's not a good word, but what then must we do if there's anything we can do?
yeah, I think just have discussions exactly like this. Everyone involved in a discussion like this, and uh, exchanging the information energy, which we are, is just doing this is helping to cast a spell, if you will, against this kind of thing. And that's the only way I think you can fight against it, is to come up with different frameworks outside of the one imposed on you by the authoritarian system of the world at the time. Um, that being said, can you, if the powers that be uh, really want to nuke the planet, and they have a critical mass of people behind them, because this reality has been convincing enough that it's uh, shaped their minds so that they're all behind it. What can you do about that? Well, physically, you couldn't really do anything to stop that. Um, yeah, I think it all just comes down to what you what you do with your own personal reality, and the kind of company you keep, and kinds of discussions you have with other people and stuff. I don't know.
Thanks, Mr.
Mm,
Mackey.
I think Hugh was also about surviving.
yeah,
Not just surviving whatever catastrophe is looming, but it's also surviving this state of affair. Like all during most of our meetings actually took place during those lockdowns and that COVID time, and it was a way getting together to stay very clear during that time, and maybe go further for many of us. But there is a certain survivalist a mentality in our meetings, because in spite of knowing everything we know, and in spite of being doomers, most people here seem to be loving life, and that goes against the project of the alien cortex, which is self-destructive and life-hating and loving death. And I think that is another very important thing that we're doing.
I think that's the most important thing to focus on if you want any kind of motto or catchphrase or whatever for the group as a whole. Yeah, team life, I really like the idea of. It doesn't have hardly any limitations. It's just that which is not death, and to really focus on that. But yeah, I think discussion and stuff as a group is of critical importance when it comes to any of this, and for people to like not be afraid to ask a question here, there, or anywhere, because uh, to go off of this model or whatever, everyone's information network is set up somewhat differently, and as we were saying, the you can produce a lot more the more closely aligned everyone's networks are, when they are aligned and when certain things happen. um, the results can be very surprising. um, they can, yeah, you almost don't really know how much can happen when people's networks are aligned. Like we're saying, they can have all kinds of deleterious effects when everyone everywhere believes that corona is, what the the TV says that it is, and everything to go along with that. You can see how real all of that stuff is, but the counter to that is what we can do as a group. And yeah, I think survival and the continuation of life, yeah, should be the biggest like underlying thing in all of this. There's all kinds of other different uh, layers to that, and that's totally up for discussion and should be discussed and all that. But that I think is of the utmost importance. And Hugh did harp on that all the time, right? You should never ever hurt yourself. Definitely pro life and pro survival and all that. So yeah. As for how do you, if you're saying what do you do about it, like I would say in some sense you can only communicate uh, with people whose information networks are at least somewhat aligned to yours. And I'm sure everyone has a million experiences with this, but you try talking to someone about certain things. If someone was to just drop in on this meeting or whatever, an average person, they'd probably just say these people are nuts, and they would tune out within 2 minutes. Uh, so there's no way to just go up to someone and talk to them about this stuff. Uh, you'd have to sort of, uh, in the spirit of what we're talking about, somewhat find a way to connect with some part of their information network and work your way up through that. Um, so I'm sure a number of people, when they first came across Hugh's videos, probably took a little while to warm up to it, um, or to him. But I'm guessing that there were certain things that he said that resonated with you. In other words, they sort of started the pathway in your own brain. They connected with something that you already had there, and then it all built on that after a while. Um, but yeah, the pervasiveness of the dominant culture's uh, imposed uh, network, the what they say is reality, is so deeply entrenched in so many people. Um, I personally think there's a lot of folks you couldn't reach, at least not by talking to them. Maybe other experiences they could have or whatever could shake them, um, or provide that sort of jump start for new pathways to form in their information network. Um, this seems to come to people sometimes when it comes to near death experiences. They have something that really jars them, and then that's the start of a different kind of life or whatever. But yeah, it's not as simple as just telling them UFOs aren't real. Because if you go back to this info energy concept, um, the egregore or whatever of their reality has had so much the information network is so much more complex, right? They have all of these different uh, narratives and stuff that have been imposed on them from day one, infused with all of this other energy, right? They've had all of these different people who have put out all this energy in telling them all of this stuff and in constructing all of these narratives that, the combination of that information and energy is so strong that just you saying a simple thing is very unlikely to shake that. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling here, but does that kind of make sense? It's not as simple as just telling them like UFOs aren't real. You'd have to do a lot of the hard work in rebuilding that framework. But that's why I think it's so valuable. What we have here is that there's a lot of that work that's been put in. There's been a lot of time that everyone here spent probably watching Hugh's videos or engaging in the meetings or watching the meetings and all that stuff. And so over that period of time, I'm guessing there's been a lot of sort of realignment of uh, these information networks, um, and it's a really good thing because we can have like uh, really in-depth discussions and important discussions and stuff, and it's only really possible because of all of this energy and info energy that's gone into it, into constructing the networks as they exist right now.
Yeah, and to answer to what you're saying about Hugh's videos, Gary often says the guru appears when the student is ready, and I think personally, and I've talked to a couple in the group about this when he came across his videos. It was not. It was more recognition than exploring new stuff. It was because his immense work has put together things that very few people have put together, all that sort of stuff that touches all sorts of subjects, from psychology to science to history to magic, to name it. You know yourself what I'm talking about. So it is extremely rare to come across this sort of content and this sort of personality. Even before you met him, like as you said, you have to spend a lot of time if you want to listen to every of these videos before even the meetings existed. So I think that the people in this group must have had an instant recognition with this type of information, because you wouldn't spend so much time if you were not in tune with this. And so what we're doing now, A said, I remember Lord Hugh saying that he did not want to do psychotherapy except maybe with us. But that is another aspect, because there was this role he was also, we were questioning him in the meeting sometimes about ourselves, about asking things like that. So I think we need to continue to do that between us, and because we are aligned in so many subtle areas that are very difficult to explain to people outside. I know this is very cultish what I'm saying, but what's your opinion?
Yeah.
I remember at one meeting I mentioned that um, I felt lucky, or it was lucky, that I came across his videos and his website, and he corrected me, and he said it was difficult to say that in truth there is no such thing as luck, and he used a word that I had not ever heard before, something about teleology, that what happens could not have happened any other way. So I'm still kind of wrapping myself around that. But what you said, Sophie, is correct in that had I not been, reading up on peak oil, or going to Guy McPherson's site, or looking at other websites related to the climate chaos, climate crisis, I would not have then come across his content. So, yeah, maybe there's already a seed or inclination within all of us. And like you said, it's like the recognition that, hey, there's something more that Lord Hugh can can explain or provide for us. So yeah, so to me, I always was a big believer in luck. So it's good luck, it's fortune, it's accidents, but I'm not. Yeah, now it's all in doubt in my mind that everything is just luck.
I would say luck implies that there's something random going on in this universe, but I would personally say that nothing's really random. I would say that everything that led you to whatever it was about peak oil or whatnot could be traced back to, I don't know. Everything that makes you you is the product of your experiences and everything that makes up the universe as a whole. And so I don't really like the idea of uh, destiny or anything like that, because that implies that the universe is going to this certain place when it's not. It's just in perpetual motion. But yeah, I would say that in a sense, you were sort of always meant to to come across that stuff, and who you are as a person is precisely what got you involved with Hugh in the first place, and that it's a different story for everyone involved, but uh, whatever it was that led you there is likely if you think about it as some sort of, again, information network inside your own head or some kind of pathway that was aligned with Hugh's, the fact that that pathway existed, say the pathway that understood that civilization is unsustainable or something, that pathway existing was precisely what led you down the road of all of these other things, um, and led you to Hugh ultimately. So in that sense, it's not luck. It's whatever, the very fabric of what makes you you is, and it's connected to that same thing in Hugh. Um, but yeah, it's whatever it is that constructs that pathway in the first place. It's all personal. It's all individual. Everyone's network is slightly different. Mine works differently than yours. Works differently than anyone else's. But yeah, there has to be that thing there to begin with, before any real communication can happen. And uh, if I'm guessing pretty much everyone here came to Hugh somewhat organically. And I'm guessing hardly anyone had uh, someone who sat them down in a chair and forced them to watch some of these videos. I would think if that was done, uh, virtually anyone would react quite poorly to that. Um, so yeah, um, the common threads, though, I would say in this particular case are very deep. I think there have to be a whole lot of different things, not just one single pathway, but a whole lot of different. Uh, if you use my Tinker Toys analogy, a lot of these rods and parts of the network that are the same among people in this group, that are yeah, they're very much aligned in order to be receptive to Hugh, because I do think the vast majority of people would not be receptive to it at all.
But
It's kind of
I think we mustn't fall either too much into the idea that we are in the know and the other ones don't, and it's us versus some people who don't see. I
no,
think we need to keep in mind that we are privileged, and maybe most of us have kind of got an education, and maybe we don't need to worry for what we're going to put on our plate, and we are relatively in good health, and that reduces enormous amount. That's a very small percentage of the population in the world that can have the leisure to sit down on Sundays to talk about the world and to do what we're doing. I think we need to see that outside outside of our group, there's an awful lot of people who are probably aligned with us, and we must not lose that either, because I think it's I don't think we need to go fishing. I agree with Hugh when he said the numbers are not important. You know, it's not that, it's the effect that's important. But we need to keep very, very clear from this thinking of, you know, the normies and us, you know, because I've seen that during the COVID creeping into all sorts of anti-vax groups and all that, thinking, you know, we are better, we know, you know, and there's, you know, and that is another path we mustn't follow. It's a trap.
Yeah, I completely agree. We don't know anything. I don't know anything. You don't know anything. No one here knows anything, which is why I like the idea of information energy and this model that I'm using, because I'm not saying that we know anything. I'm saying that our information network in our own head is just aligned. That's all that it is. It's just this way of interfacing with the information energy network outside of you. And for whatever reason, privilege, all that kind of stuff totally plays a role. Everything that made each of us who we are, uh, economically, geographically, biologically, all that stuff is all that led us to here. But yeah, it's not above anyone else. It's just a different way of sense making. So yeah, I completely agree, Sophie. Once you get into that sort of hierarchical thinking, you're doing the exact thing that I said is fallacious to begin with, which is the idea that we have this objective understanding of the real reality that others don't, and that's not the case. Once you get into thinking like that, you're engaging the alien cortex, and I would say in Hugh's terminology, the reptilian brain. Robert Anton Wilson has the territorial circuit, I think. I don't remember, but it's the same concept there. And yeah, that's definitely to be avoided, because you know, hatred and what would you call it, belittling others or whatever, engenders all kinds of negative emotions and stuff in you, and that'll cause
Yeah,
all kinds.
I suppose just looking at it in a broader perspective, objective view, if you think about it in terms of the events that have been happening, I mean, we are, if we remember, we're in collapse. So what's going to happen is what we've just seen, that, you know, we've pivoted on a dime from coronavirus literally within the space of almost 72 hours to war, you know, and it suits, and these narratives, you know, they suit a larger agenda. And one thing that we can be sure of, although we can't fully make sense of it, because it's almost like it was, you know, it was predestined that Putin would do this, you know, with NATO shitting on him for years and years and years. It's almost like they wanted this to happen, and this sort of fits this long game narrative. I mean, who knows? But if we can just focus on that, we know it as an overarching view that this is what will happen, you know, in collapse. We will see this, you know, we can guarantee, as we've said from previous discussions, that most likely the next thing in the pipeline is going to be, you know, huge problems with food security. I mean, we're already seeing it, and with a monetary crisis, which is, you know, staring us, you know, down the barrel of a gun right now. You know, that's the next thing, you know, or we can see all these energy prices, all of this is all setting up. So I suppose, to sort of say in a roundabout way, yeah, we as a group, we can be sure of that we are, naturally we found each other because we're like-minded, in that we are sort of realists. And it's not, but yeah, we shouldn't, you're dead right, we should not be trying to say, oh, you know, we've got some crystal ball and that we can see exactly how it's going to play out. But we can be certain that this is going to be, yeah, long running, and it's going to be, next thing will be, yeah, who knows, you know, food riots, or another war, or, you know, or a small scale nuclear war. It's, you can put all of these things into the punch bowl, they're all coming. But it's, I suppose it's, yeah, talking about our group, our outlook helps us to sort of weave a path through it of resilience and understanding that, yeah, this is here, this is it, this is real, like it's happening right now. We, you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Anytime you get into thinking that you know something, you're closing off doors for understanding new things that are going on, or taking it in. Keeping as much of an open mind as possible 24/7 is of the utmost importance. But yeah, I personally, this stuff is interesting to talk about, but it's really just kind of mental masturbation when we're talking about all this stuff. The more pertinent aspects are what you do with it. Um, and yeah, I would like to talk more about the real stuff that's going on right now. Um, and yeah, no, you're entirely right. It's hitting the fan as we speak. Corona disappeared
Yeah,
from everyone.
I feel like the whole thing of the UFOs was a, yeah, I mean, I think we should, yeah, forget that one now. I mean, Hugh said himself he absolutely loathed that subject, and I don't really feel like we need to push any more on any of that. I think it was a good lens to just understand what you've all just said, which is, and it's really valuable discussion to say that it, you know, they will probably pull any trick in the book, and yeah, and I think if you can look at everyone around us in terms of it's the dominant propaganda and rhetoric, that's what most people fall for, so to speak. Not to look down on people, but it's very easy for people to be swayed one way or the other, you know, just, you know, literally like the changing of the wind. It just, you just see it around you, and as you say, it's very hard to, there's no point in trying to persuade people or to think that you know everything, but you can just say, yeah, it's more complex, it's much more nuanced than we see. But it's so anyway, yeah, it's worth discussing, yeah, much more the things that we see daily rather than getting het up in, yeah, the idea that, you know, some point there's going to be a spaceship landing outside the White House or something. I mean, but I think we're a long way from that. But yeah, in the meantime, there's plenty of other stuff to discuss.
I don't think Hugh was discussing ufology in that line. I think he was following the same path that we were talking about today of info energy, and he was using more that analogy, you know, as an analogy. But I mean, that could be also, I mean, if we really want to close the subject of ufology, we should all have a clear understanding of it. I mean, of what Hugh meant about it. And I think, is it you, JDW, who was saying that you would be interested maybe one day in expanding a bit on that subject, maybe, and so that we could really look at it.
Yeah, my only interest was in putting in context what you said. I loathe ufology, UFO conspiracy theorists, even. I mean, it's just not, you know, my own. I have seen nothing to cause me to want to discuss it at length. It's just one of so many other manifestations. But Hugh's idea of info of the psychic manifestation is shared with a couple of other interesting people. And so, you know, if people had wanted to hear more or go further into what Hugh was doing, I think, yeah, I'd be up for that. But I don't mind foregoing it if the group is not interested in it.
Maybe we could take a poll on that one day on Reddit.
Yeah, and we don't have to do it sooner rather than later. Yeah. I think it's going to come back because as an issue, because this kooky Space Force thing is going to come back, and because it's going to keep going, and you know, Hugh brought it up. As I said, the only evidence I can gratifying for him even bringing it up is two references in the Extinctionati manifesto, and although his rate of introducing new topics in the last 4 or 6 meetings was kind of increasing, almost like in a semi-manic or panicked state, there is a rationality to why he went through his riff on UFOs. He went very deep into it. But I don't see, if the group is not interested in proceeding to analyze that, then that's is what it is.
I wasn't trying to say that it was not valuable what Hugh was getting at with all of this. I think it's totally relevant. I mean, you could almost argue that this whole psychic energy for a push to war is why we're in this situation now with Putin, and why he has done what he's done. It's almost like the West has created this huge amount of psychic energy to push him into that situation. Do you see what I mean? So there's parallels that we can look at in relation to this whole very nuanced and esoteric discussion about psychic energy and magic and woo, and it does have relevance to what we see around us in these world events that are unfolding now. So it's highly relevant, and I think we could maybe branch it into the way that the way the world is going.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. That would be interesting anyway, to keep and explore everything we can. Now, next week is the 20th, and we were going to do a little thing for Hugh, each of us. I mean, in the privacy of our homes. That's what was the idea, and I think the equinox is the time. I can post something on Reddit if you like, but there should be a meeting also next Sunday. But if we follow the alternate thing, next Sunday should be the Eastern one, so it should be a 6:30 UTC. So maybe we could do a little bit, because there's a lot of attendees today. There's a lot of people, so maybe we could pick an agenda for the Eastern meeting that day, because we might want to discuss whatever happened for us with Hugh, whether we want to discuss it or not for his little ceremony. We can do it at another time, another day. But if you got any suggestions for a subject we could touch, or would you like to go what you were saying, Tom, like that we talk more about current things? I don't know if many people here can attend the Eastern meeting though. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm easy. Whatever people, what the consensus is. Yeah, it's always a bit tricky, that one. It's quite early, isn't it, for the Aussies? Was it as packed, the meeting for the Eastern meeting?
There were quite a few. I actually copied it, recorded it, I mean, and but I'm just answering your question, yeah. And I didn't post, well, I don't know how to post it, so I sent it to Gary and Mike, and I think, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, Gary had to, well, I didn't say, but Gary has to put up with some personal things in Australia at the moment with the weather and everything, and Mike has got some issues to deal with, personal family stuff. So I don't think he did upload the Eastern meeting. I didn't see it, so I'll get back to him on that one, and I'm going to send him this one too. There was quite a few people. Do you know what? Today I'm a bit tired. My memory is playing. I can't remember much what went on at the Eastern meeting. I should. I'll have a look at it, and I'll post what I remember. But there was quite a few people. Yeah, there was quite a few people. It was not as long, and Jesus, I can't even remember what we talked about. This is very bad. Anyway, so this one is recorded, and hopefully they'll be posted. So any idea about the agenda for next Sunday, Eastern, or else would anybody, maybe we could put things on Reddit and suggest the agenda once the meeting has been put up, and then we could just write, underneath what we want to talk about. Yeah, and I'd say, yeah, Gary's house it was not flooded, but he had quite a bit of mud coming the back door, and he was in the middle of the floods. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose if there's any talk of discussion with Faulty or anything, or if that's a separate thing, maybe, or otherwise
Oh,
just as
Sorry,
people feel
the Faulty.
what people have been posting on Reddit, and maybe if there's a theme of whatever that
Oh,
people
sorry, yeah, the
are
Faulty.
pressing
completely
to
escaped
discuss.
my mind, because I sent an email around, but I don't know if everybody got it. Because honestly, I've been a little bit, I've been a bit disorganized the last couple of weeks. All these things happening, I'm not used to all this sort of stuff. So Gary and I didn't feel up to meet Faulty this Sunday. I mean, we said we have nothing to offer. We are not. We're not knowledgeable in ARGs and things like that, and nobody really was ready at this stage to come up with something solid to offer Faulty. So we said, listen, we'll shelve it for a while, and we cancel the meeting. And it was a good thing, because we wouldn't have been able to say anything. I think Gary wanted to also revive the ARG also, and in a gesture towards Faulty, who contacted us again after Hugh passed away, which is understandable. But we decided, both of us, we're not ready at all. And that doesn't mean that we have to completely eliminate the project, but it's there and it can be picked up. But we need experts and people who have a head for that, So sorry, I don't know if everybody heard about that. So.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, I mean, Hugh just gave so much information to Faulty. He came to England, he wrote up the whole essay on ARGs and egregores, and he gave a lot of information there. I mean, I don't really understand what Faulty wants us to do, really. I mean, we're not. I mean, if he had the time, I guess the guy's a busy guy, but if he had followed what we've been doing, it's kind of. Well, yeah, I mean, to us, I suppose it's obvious that we aren't necessarily the ones that were the shining beacon to be able to enact it. It was all Hugh, and he had the wherewithal and the full vision, as it were, to put that into practice. So it's very difficult for us, unless, as you say, you've got. I mean, yeah, maybe there's a few people who could interact with them if they needed some help technically to get things going, like Ryan and people like that, if they were interested. But otherwise, I just kind of feel like he left it too long. I mean, unfortunately, he should have, if he wasn't dicking around with Burning Pink or some other nonsense that he fucked around with, then he could have had a bit more input from you, couldn't he? But too late. I don't know. I feel a bit angry with him, and I think the problem is that he's a busy guy. He's got loads of people tugging at him this way and that, but it's that's what it was. I mean, gave him the sense of what has to happen. It's got to be done in America, and that was kind of and there all the information was there. I mean, you can look back at all the videos. I mean that's probably enough information, I would have thought.
And he received all the information on the background information about the ARG, which is about, I don't know, it's nearly a 20-page thing, or it's a big thing, and he's got a lot of it. He knows where to find us. I mean, I think now, if he really wants to get back, he knows, and personally, I don't have the energy yet. I think I'd like to continue the Extinctionati meetings and get over all this shock we've all had, and all this. So I don't want to be distracted by trying to.
Yeah, because the problem is it could easily just end up being this sort of energy sapping thing. It could just turn into him being a vampire, or like all the people around him just sapping out energy that we haven't got for this. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic. Sorry. I don't know. What do other people think?
I've I don't have much of an opinion on that. I don't know much about Faulty. I've just seen some of his work via Hugh, but yeah, I don't completely. I'm not completely sold that he would. The project itself sounds like something that would take up your entire life, and I don't see him being a guy that would actually commit to that. I would think if he was that level of enthusiastic, the level that would be required to actually do it, he would have he would have done it by now. He would have come around to that. So I don't know. I don't mean to be a party pooper for anyone. And if other people have different ideas, by all means, don't let me rain on your parade. But yeah, I share the same thought about the guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I suppose you could argue for. I mean, there's to say, well, yeah, that it's worth talking to the guy and just have an initial meeting with him, see where he's at. I mean, if he's ready to just burn all bridges with his whole, activist leftist strategy, which is very set in the mud, that he's been born to since that strategy from the 80s. If he's literally just saying, look, that's it, yeah, complete change of strategy, and he definitely wants to go full bore with this, that's positive, yeah, no doubt. But maybe we can help guide him slightly. But I just don't think he is. I mean, I always remember Hugh saying it's very difficult for him because he is so wedded to that old school way of being, that old activist side of him. It's very much, and all the people around him are very much of that persuasion as well. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what he says. It would be good to just at least have a meeting with him and maybe just see where he's at. Maybe in your communication you could say, have you had a chance to look through, the material and maybe point certain videos his way? Yeah.
Well, I haven't been interacting directly with him, Tom. It's been Gary. So if you want to drop a line to Gary, he will tell you exactly what was the interaction. I was just going to attend a meeting with him. That's all, so that you wouldn't be on your own. So if you want to drop him a line, he'll be able to tell you what he's told him and where he's left he's left the ball in his camp. I think, he knows we're there and it's up to him to come back, and basically that's what I understood. But you should ask him directly, probably.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I may well send Gary an email, see what he says. Is he on the email much? Or is he just...
Yeah, always. Yeah, he replies to his emails. He's on the mailing list. You can get him on there. Yeah.
I think Tom's ideas are great because, it's really true that Faulty dropped the ball. And then in reality, if he does want to pursue it and he thinks that, he can let go of his old strategies, he would be, I would imagine, more connected, would have more resources, and probably would have more, how should I say it? Like, he would be taken more seriously by the people who have skills in this ARG world than us would be, like, who are the Extinctionati, who's going to listen to us. But somebody like Faulty would carry more weight in connecting with people who have the ARG skills.
Well, maybe we should appeal to the Extinctionati that are present to kind of look around now, because we had contacted Spencer and with the view of getting in touch with Jeff Hull, but there's some other people out there who are into that sort of thing, and maybe there are some people who could at least collect that information and keep it in case, or share it in case Faulty makes another attempt at contacting us on the subject,
I personally don't have anything in the way of that stuff. I don't have any technical know-how or technological know-how or anything. I don't know computer programming or anything like that. I certainly wouldn't be the one to be able to offer anything in that regard.
Same here.
Someone has artistic skills in our group who likes to draw. Maybe he can be a graphic designer for, but there's so many sets of skills that I think are needed.
I think the arc was in Hugh's head, and that's very difficult. I think he had this kind of global vision of it, so it was very difficult for him to communicate it sometimes very clearly to us because he could see it. So I don't know, could it be matched now with an understanding that would be so huge? But you never know. You never know.
Right, and I could also see the bigger definition of an ARG. It's not really, it could not be just really the strict role playing game or alternative reality game. It could be like the Slovenian friends that he influenced. It's still using the internet, but it's not. It's like yeah, kind of like an extension or not exactly the pure form, but it's kind of like everything is a game, everything is a cult. That could be a bigger definition of the ARG. I don't know.
Guys, I've put in the chat a link to what seems to me a May 2021 podcast that with Recluse, cults, args, and extinction. And I'm just wondering if anyone here is familiar with that, or is that same interview? Is that same podcast the one that was a video of an earlier Recluse? I don't think it was.
No, that was a different one. He actually did send us at the time the link to this. It was on Recluse's podcast, and he was invited. Right. So I remember at the time I listened to it last year. Yeah, it was.
So that is he talks about everything there. I listened to it.
Okay,
2
thank
weeks
you.
ago. But anyway, and it's for those that are interested in the foreground of his discussions that may have come up in the January, February of this year. Some of it is there.
Okay.
In this. So.
Thanks for that.
Sophie, why don't we leave it like this? That, again, I on the UFO thing, it was not that I wanted to do a recounting of all ufology or critique all the different kooks and nuts out there. It was to focus on what Hugh had said and the context and go further and make a comparison with him. Why don't we leave it like this, that we'll leave that as a potential topic. And if there's a vacuum, if there's a session coming up in April or something where nobody has something, I might offer to, do what I had in mind to go to cover this. And I'd send out some links in beforehand. So we'll just leave it as something to pencil in rather than.
Exactly. I think it's a very good idea. And I think that we should leave it open for next Sunday Eastern, and everybody can post on the Reddit or else on Discord if people don't go on Reddit or whatever, email, and then we can come up with an agenda that will be, but it won't be as structured as today, but there won't be a topic as clearly defined, but it might be what Tom was saying. We might want to look a bit at current events and, our take on it. And to answer for the Slovenian project, I always remembered that the ultimate goal that Hugh had in the ARG was to get people to do deep adaptation, and I think that's what's happening with those guys there. I really like what they're doing. I hope one day that Alesh would come on with us for a talk. It would be really good, and it might be time to say goodbye. It's been 2 hours. Have you got any other things? And I wanted to thank you very much for the book, Mr. Mickey, and the videos, because that was I haven't finished reading it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. I want to just reiterate that it's whatever any of this stuff means to you is sort of what's important. There is no correct interpretation of any of this kind of stuff. And yeah, I also want to second what other people are saying, that I'm personally more interested in talking about real physical stuff, current events or adaptation stuff like that. The only reason I thought this was important, and I think why Hugh thought it was important, was to lay as sort of a framework just for understanding things. And on the topic of UFOs and stuff, it's not to get into the weeds about which different sect of Mormonism believes in which level of celestial beings or whatever. I abhor that stuff, but it's to understand the framework behind where all of that stuff comes from, and yeah, to understand sort of some of these basic concepts insofar as they relate to those things, because that's sort of like a ground level sort of framework to build a lot of this other stuff off of, and that the alignment of the information networks that I'm talking about, I think, is the really crucial part. DB says knowing the woo is to stay out of the honeypot. Yeah, exactly. To know how this